So last time I built the interior from start to finish, and now I'm going to move on to painting all the chassis components and ending up with a fully finished chassis. Now first off, I'm just applying a couple of coats of primer to all the parts in order to make the paint stick a lot better. It works without the primer, though the finish on the paint looks terrible, and it doesn't really stick as well to the parts either. So I prefer just to put 1 or 2 light coats of primer on it. I'm not going full on as I would with the body, as these parts are mostly not visible anyway, so 1 coat of primer should be more than enough. The wheels and a lot of other components from the chassis also got painted black. Now the other components were just left with the black finish, and the wheels got some clear coat simultaneous with the body to give them a really deep shine. Since it's a Nissan Skyline I'm building, it's probably not going to be left stock for a long time. So I decided to give the chassis some more color, starting with the springs and the brake calipers, along with a lot of other components, giving it some green and some various other tones, just to make it look like it has some aftermarket parts on it and have it a bit different than the standard stuff always being black. Now, along with these springs and dampers, I painted the calipers yellow first. I did not end up liking the look of this with the dark body and the dark wheels, so I painted them gold instead. As this is still a Nismo version and the exhaust is probably modified by Nismo as well, I decided to go with a titanium finish just to make it stand out a bit more than a stock silver would. Now that all the main parts received their color and the chassis got that simultaneous with the body, it was time to give it some more detail and depth and not have it look one color all around. So the chassis got some flat black in the wheel wells and on the gas tank, and it also got some silver on various other parts like the brakes and some of the damper components. And I also gave the chassis a light dry brushing with some silver to simulate some scratches and road use as well. With most of the big details now painted on the chassis, I could move on to giving it a light dry brush. Now basically what you do is you put some silver paint or any other color you want to brush onto the brush, and then wipe most of it off on a paper towel or whatever you feel your fancy, and then just go over all the high and low spots on the chassis where it's most likely to scratch with stones or road use and all sorts of stuff like that. I'm going over it really quick. This is left in real time just to make it as random as I can and not just focus on a couple of areas and miss others completely. Now that all the parts and pieces are painted and detailed, it's time to move on to assembly. Now with these parts being painted, regular plastic glue doesn't really work that well or quick enough for my taste. So I take out my Zap CA glue, otherwise known as super glue. This works really well with painted parts, but it doesn't work with clear parts, as it can leave a fogging from the damp of the glue if it's trapped inside the part, and it will completely ruin it. So be careful when using it and know where to use it and where not to use it. On a chassis like this, it's totally fine. On interior pieces, it's also totally fine. Just stay away from the clear parts. The chassis is now fully assembled, so I took out my weathering set from Tamiya and gave the exhaust a light weather on a couple of the components to make it look a bit more realistic and not look as dull one piece as it does right now. So with the weathering done on those couple of spots, just to make it stand out a bit, I took out some Tamiya smoke to create some depth and highlights all around, mainly on the engine and gearbox, to have that stick out a bit more and make it look dirty, just like the rest of the chassis with the weathering and a bit of the dry brushing. Now I might go over it again with a bit more dry brushing, but I'm not sure because it kind of looks good enough as it is right now. Create a bit more depth on the radiator, I also applied some smoke on that. I was a bit over enthusiastic and I applied way too much, so I just took out a Q-tip and wiped off the excess material I didn't like on there.